Adonai.
Shabbat Shalom, Mo'adim L'Simcha, or Chag Sameach. This is Chol HaMoed, Shabbat Chol HaMoed Sukkot, the Shabbat during the intermediary days of Sukkot. And so we place our intentions not only to welcome Shabbat, but also to be in the midst of this festival. One of the commandments for the festival of Sukkot is to be joyful for 7 full days. It is known as Zman Simchatenu, the time of our rejoicing. So I don't know about you, but it could be a challenge to find joy in every single day. You don't have to be joyful all day, but say the rabbis, this is a time to find joy and meaning in every day, no matter what. A great challenge sometimes in the world we live in, but nevertheless, we set our intentions. We're glad you're here, whether it's in person or on live stream, to join us in joyful singing and participation throughout our service. So we begin on page 76 as we praise God for the gift of our bodies, for its inner workings, and then the cantor will lead us as we praise God for our souls. So actually we're going to read on page 77 on the top together. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, sovereign of the universe. With divine wisdom you have made our bodies, combining veins, arteries, and vital organs into a finely balanced network. Wondrous maker and sustainer of life, were one of them to fail, how well we are aware. We would lack the strength to stand before you. Blessed are you, Adonai, source of our health and strength. Baruch atah Adonai, rofei chol basar, umafli la'asot. Page 78.
Elohai neshama shenatata b'tehorahi. Elohai neshama shenatata b'tehorahi.
Elohai neshama shenatata b'tehorahi. Elohai neshama shenatata b'tehorahi. Elohai neshama shenatata b'tehorahi. Elohai neshama shenatata b'tehorahi. On page 88, Elu Divarim She'ein Lahem Shi'or, we read together this teaching from the Talmud, from Pirkei Avot, reminding us of our obligations to each other, both in our families, in our communities, and beyond. Join with me. These are the things that are limitless, of which a person enjoys the fruit of the world, while the principle remains in the world to come. They are honoring one's father and mother, engaging in deeds of compassion, arriving early for study morning and evening, dealing graciously with guests, visiting the sick, providing for the wedding couple, accompanying the dead for burial, being devoted in prayer, and making peace among people. But the study of Torah encompasses them all. On page 106, we rise for Chatzi Kaddish and remain standing through the Shema.
Yitkadash Shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
Be'amad yivrach ritei, ve'amnich malchutei, v'chayachon v'yomechon v'chayei l'chol Beit Yisrael. Ba'agala v'zeman kariv, v'yimeru. Amen. Yehi Shemei Rabbah mevorach, le'olam olam me'amaya. Yitbarach, Yitbarach v'yishtabach, v'yitpa'ar v'yitramar v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitoleh v'yitalal, Shemei l'kodesha b'richu, ברוכתה ושרתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, תמירון בעולמה, וימרו אמן.
Page 108. On page 110, we read together praising God for the gift of creation. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, yotzer or uvorei choshech, oseh shalom uvorei et hakol, hameir la'aretz v'ladarim aleha barachamim, uvtuvo mechadesh bechol yom tamid ma'aseh v'reshit. Ma rabu ma'asecha Adonai, kulam bechokma asita mal'a haaretz kinyanecha, titbarach Adonai Eloheinu al shevach ma'aseh yadecha, va'al me'orei or she'asita yifa'arucha sela, or chadash al Tzion ta'ir, v'nizkechu lanu mehirat le'oro, Baruch atah Adonai, yotzer ha'me'orot. On page 112. How deeply, yes? Okay. How deeply you have loved us, Adonai our God, gracing us with surpassing compassion. On account of our forebears whose trust led you to teach them the laws of life, be gracious to us, teaching us as well. O merciful one, have mercy on us by making us able to understand and discern, to heed, learn, and teach, and lovingly to observe, perform, and fulfill all that is in your Torah.
V'ha'ereneinu b'toratecha, v'dabek libeinu b'mitzvotecha, v'yached levaveinu le'ahava u'yira et shemecha, v'lo nivosh, v'lo nikolem, v'lo Hagadol v'hanora v'atachnu, nagila v'nismecha b'yeshuatecha, v'keravtanu l'shimcha hagadol sela be'emet, lehodot lecha u'liachetcha b'ahava. Baruch atah Adonai, habocher b'amo Yisrael be'ahava. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai echad. Baruch Shem kevod malchuto le'olam va'ed. You may be seated. Please join me on page 116 with Haftara. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha v'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha v'chol me'odecha והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
On the bottom of page 121, we read responsively, "The eternal truth is that you alone are God, and there is none else."
May the righteous of all nations rejoice in your love and exult in your justice.
Let them beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks.
Let nation not lift up sword against nation, nor learn war anymore.
You shall not hate your brother or your sister in your heart.
The stranger that sojourns with you shall be accepted as your equal, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt.
Why do you crush my people and oppress the poor, asks God.
We know that the Eternal One defends the poor and upholds the rights of the needy.
Praise to God Most High.
Blessed is God and deserving of blessing.
We rise for the tefillah on page 124.
Tehillah Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el HaGadol, HaGibor v'Hanora, Eloyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'Koneh HaKol, V'Zocher Chastei Avot V'Imahot, U'Mevi Geula Livnei V'neihem, Le'ma'an Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Hozer U'Moshiach U'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham V'Ezrat Sarah, Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechayeh HaKol atah Rav Lehoshia, Morid Hatal, Mechakel Chaim Bechesed, Mechayeh HaKol Berachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim V'Rofei Cholim, U'Matir Asurim, U'Mekayem Emunato, Lishenei Afar, Michamocha Bal Gevurot, U'Midor Melech, Melech Memit U'Mechayeh, U'Motzmiach Yeshua, V'ne'eman atah l'chayot hakol, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechayeh hakol. Nikadesh et shemcha ba'olam, Keshem shemot tishim oto b'shmei maron, Kakatov ayad neviecha, Mekara zel ze ve'amar, Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzevaot, Meloch ol haaretz, Kevodo, Adir Adirenu, Adonai Adonenu, Madir Shimecha bechol haaretz, Baruch Kevod Adonai Mimkomo. Echad hu Eloheinu, hu Avinu Mokeinu, hu Moshienu ve'hu Yoshmienu, berachamav le'nei kol chai. Ani Adonai Elohechem, Himloch Adonai le'olam, Elohai Tzion, ledor vador, Hallelujah. Ledor vador agikod lecha, ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש, ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש, לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש.
You may be seated as we turn to page 132 and sing with joy, Yismechu, celebrating and thanking God for the gift of Shabbat.
ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת, פורעי עונג שבת. ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת, פורעי עונג שבת.
on the bottom of page 135. Where has this week vanished? Is it lost forever? Will I ever recover anything from it? The joy of life, the unexpected victory, the realized hope, the task accomplished. Will I ever be able to banish the memory of pain, the sting of defeat, the heaviness of boredom? On this day, let me keep for a while what must drift away. On this day, let me be free of the burdens that must return. On this day, Shabbat, abide. Help me to withdraw for a while from the flight of time, contain the retreat of the hours and days from the grasp of frantic life. Let me learn to pause if only for this day. Let me find peace on this day. Let me enter into a quiet world this day. On this day, Shabbat, abide. Baruch atah Adonai, mekadesh ha-Shabbat. On the top of page 137, we read together. Ever-present one, may we, your people Israel, be worthy in our deeds and our prayer, wherever we live, wherever we seek you, in this land, in Zion restored, in all lands. You are our God, whom alone we serve in reverence. Baruch atah Adonai, she'otacha levadecha b'yirah na'avod. On page 138, we share together in Modim, our prayer of thanksgiving. We acknowledge with thanks that you are Adonai, our God, and the God of our ancestors forever. You are the rock of our lives and the shield of our salvation in every generation. Let us thank you and praise you for our lives which are in your hand, for our souls which are in your care, for your miracles that we experience every day, and for your wondrous deeds and favors at every time of day, evening, morning, and noon. O good one whose mercies never end, O compassionate one whose kindness never fails, we forever put our hope in you. For all these things, O sovereign, let your name be forever praised and blessed. O God, our Redeemer and Helper, let all who live affirm you and praise your name in truth. Blessed are you, Adonai, your name is goodness, and you are worthy of thanksgiving. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha ulecha na'eh lehodot.
Sim, 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 shalom, sim, 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 shalom, sim, 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 shalom, tov v'racha. Sim, 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 shalom, sim, 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 shalom, sim, 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 shalom, tov v'racha. Ya la 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 la, ya la la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, sim, 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 shalom, sim, 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 shalom, sim, 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 shalom, tov v'racha. Please take a moment for your own silent prayers. Shalom, shalom b'meromat, uyaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru Shalom, shalom.
Seder Kriyat Torah, service for the reading of Torah, page 200. Wow. Assemble the people, men, women, and children, and the strangers in your cities to hear, to learn, to revere Adonai, your God, to observe faithfully the words of this Torah. And let their children who do not yet know it hear, that they too may learn to revere Adonai, your God. We rise in honor of the Torah.
In kamachava Elohim Adonai, ben kemasecha, machutcha machut kol olamim, u'mer meshaltecha b'chol dor v'dor. Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai imloch le'olam va'ed. Adonai oz le'mo yitin, Adonai yevarech et amo v'shalom.
On the bottom of page 247, we read responsively. In this scroll is the secret of our people's life from Sinai until now.
Its teaching is love and justice, goodness and hope. Freedom is its gift to all who treasure it. Baruch Shenatan Torah, Torah. Baruch Shenatan Torah, Torah. Le'amo Yisrael b'kedushato. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai echad. Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo. Gadlu Adonai iti, unomem Shemo yachtav. Lecha Adonai hagdulah, v'hagvura, v'tiferet, v'hanetzach, v'ha'od. Kicho b'shamayim u'va'aretz, kicho b'shamayim u'va'aretz. Lecha Adonai amamacha, v'mitnaseh lechol erosh. Hine ma tov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov, hine ma tov. Ya la 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 la. Hine ma tov, hine ma tov. Ya la 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 la.
You may be seated. Our Torah portion for this the Shabbat is not part of the regular flow. We are at the very, very end of Deuteronomy, right? Because on Monday evening we're going to be celebrating Simchat Torah, and then on Simchat Torah morning, public service announcement, Tuesday, 10:30, we're going to read the last section of Deuteronomy, and then the first section of Genesis. I try to do it all in one breath. We'll see how it goes. That won't happen exactly the same way on Monday night, but if work gets in the way of Tuesday morning, I definitely encourage you to come on Monday evening, 6 o'clock. We're going to have our band. We're going to dance with the Torahs. We're going to do lots of wonderful things to celebrate the gift that Torah is. So hope to see you there. But this morning, we're going to take a moment to focus in on a piece of our service that we generally do not do these days, which is the Haftara. You may know that in a more traditional setting, there's obviously a Torah portion for every week, and then an accompanying Haftara that goes with it. It's not half of a Torah. It is usually text that's taken from later books of the Hebrew Bible as a whole. And for each Torah portion during the course of the year, there's a specific section, whether it's from a prophet or the Kings or other books. And then for the festivals, there are specific entire scrolls or books that are attached to those holidays. For an adult education course of another time, we will talk about why each one goes with each. But for the festival of Sukkot, the tradition is to read from the book of Ecclesiastes, known as Kohelet in Hebrew. Okay, so that's a little bit of a long introduction to say that this morning we're going to look at just one verse of Kohelet, the opening verse of Kohelet, but spend a little more time to think about why it is that the rabbis of old, or the tradition, set that this would be the section of Hebrew Bible that we would read in connection to the festival of Sukkot. By the way, if you look in your Hebrew Bible and where is Ecclesiastes? It's down there in the writings, right? It's not the Torah, it's not the prophets, it's in the writings. Those are much later books, according to tradition, probably written somewhere in the 3rd century BCE. And traditionally, this text is ascribed to Solomon because the opening verse says that a king descended from David. David's son was, at least the one that became the next king, was Solomon. Great. Okay. So we start with not the opening verse of Kohelet, but the second verse of Kohelet, which is often translated as, "Utter futility," said Kohelet. "Utter futility, all is futile," right? So you may remember at the beginning of services, I said Sukkot is Zman Simchatinu, a festival of joy where we are supposed to be happy the entire week while we sit in our sukkahs and we drink our wine and we eat our food and we give thanks for the festival and the bounty, right? So why would the text that we're supposed to read start by telling us that everything in the world, it's for naught, right? By the end of the next 7 or 8 minutes, you hopefully will understand. Okay, so let's just start with 3 traditional commentaries to help us understand perhaps what it is that Kohelet, or Solomon, or whoever the author is trying to tell us. Okay, Michael, why don't you read the Rashi for us?
Kohelet cries out and says that everything created during the 7 days of creation is futile.
Okay, so Rashi is reading this on a pretty straightforward basis, right? The author or the speaker of the book is looking at all the bounty of the 7 days of creation, right, which we're going to read again. We're going to start next week, and says, sounds great, but I don't think so. Okay, it's pretty dire, right? We're gonna lift ourselves up in just a moment. Zach, over there. Can you read the Al Sheikh for us? Hold on, Cantor's coming with a microphone, so everyone, including our friends on live stream, can see. Here.
Open your eyes and perceive. What profit or perfection can man expect to achieve by tilling in mundane and material matters, on earth beneath the heavens? Better to strive to serve his Creator and immerse himself in his Torah, which is loftier than the heavens. Only through the Torah and its mitzvot can one acquire eternal spiritual perfection.
So it's not, thank you. So it's not that everything that was created during the 7 days of creation is worth nothing. It's that if you only focus on the material world, hence the 7 days of creation, you will not realize spiritual uplift. You will not understand what your true calling in the world is. That all the mundane, all the material matters, they're really not, they're just a barrier to you to reach that higher connection to God, right? And Ramban Nachmanides, he spells that out as well. I do not know your name. Can you? Yeah? Donna, would you read the Ramban for us?
Sure. This is not a superlative noun, fertility or fertilities, but rather imperative.
Hevel.
Hevel, make fertile. Do I read this? Hevelin, all fertilities. Whatever is utterly fertile in this world should be abhorred Do not attempt to attach undue importance to this temporal world. All is fertile.
Okay, so Ramban is not just saying, Ramban is saying, don't read it, look out in the world and say, futile of futilities. He's saying, no, you should say, those futilities, they're futile. Meaning, put away the things that are meaningless in the world. They will not bring you any joy. They will not bring you any uplift. Separate yourself from the material world. That is the only way to feel connected and spiritual uplift from God. Okay, so back about 20 plus years ago, Rabbi Rami Shapiro wrote a book called The Way of Solomon. It's a beautiful, beautiful book, looking at the entire book of Ecclesiastes, not only retranslating it, but in reinterpreting it for our modern day, I think in a really powerful way. So here's how he reinterprets, just notice that verse 2 is what, like 10 words? He makes it a little longer, but he unpacks it in a really beautiful way. Dimitri, will you read the alternative interpretation?
Emptiness, emptiness upon emptiness. The world is fleeting of form, empty of permanence, void of surety, without certainty, like a breath breathed once and gone. All things rise and fall. Understand emptiness, and tranquility replaces anxiety. Understand emptiness, and compassion replaces jealousy. Understand emptiness, and you will cease to excuse suffering and begin to alleviate it.
I find this really powerful, and it really builds off of what Nachmanides is saying, right? Which is, it's not that everything is futile, but if you seek to find completion or a sense of satisfaction only from the things that you acquire, only from the stuff that you have, then you will always be restless. You will never be satisfied. But if you are able to embrace the fact that the world is constantly moving and that there is a fleetingness to nature, and just be in the moment and try to make peace with who you are and where you are in that moment, then so much of the anxiety and the sense of not being centered in the world that you may have, which we all have, the angst, will will start to dissipate. So Rami Shapiro explains a little bit what this is all about. Andrew, will you read the Rami Shapiro? It goes on to the other side, just forewarn.
Ecclesiastes is a brilliant paring away of our illusions about life in order to free our energies and focus our attention on those things that will bring tranquility and hope into our lives. We long for a self that is unchanging. The idea that such a self is an illusion leaves us anxious and agitated. Life is havalim, not vain and futile as most translators put it, but empty of separate and permanent selves and open to constant change and surprise. The world is in a constant state of flux. Everything changes, nothing stays the same. And if there is no past to replicate or future to anticipate, then there is only this present moment and our embracing of it. And in this very moment, there is the potential for clarity of insight and quiet joy that can be found nowhere else. Immorality is an illusion. Memory fades.
I think it's immortality,
Okay.
sorry.
Immortality is an illusion. Memory fades. Doing something great and doing something small are equal in the eyes of eternity. What matters is not our legacy, but our capacity to enjoy and honor life here and now. And that capacity is a gift that comes to us with insight into true emptiness, the way of Solomon.
Thank you. So now we move away from Rashi, seemingly looking at the 7 days of creation and saying, the world means nothing, right? To a much more maybe mystical understanding of the world that says, if we're only thinking about the future, if we're only preparing on how to be bigger and better, we miss the moment we're in right now. And whether it's a quiet moment or an amazing moment, it's still the moment where you are. And it's up to us to realize the joy and the gift of life in every single moment, which takes a lot of work and a lot of intention. Okay, we're gonna skip the Heschel. You can read it on your own. It's beautiful, we don't need it. How does this connect back into Sukkot? I promised I would tell you, right, why we're here. Bernadette, will you read the Rashbam for us?
You shall dwell in booths, lest you should say in your hearts, my power and the might of my right hand has gotten me this wealth. It is the practice to go out and live in booths in recognition of those who have no inheritance and no house to dwell in. For this reason did the Holy One fix Sukkot at the time of the great harvest, an ingathering of corn and wine, that people should not be guilty of pride in their well-stocked homes and abundant lives.
Thank you. So why are we commanded to dwell in Sukkot for 7 days? Because at the height of our harvest, when we have more food perhaps, more wine, more olives than we might have the whole rest of the year, we shouldn't think that that's because of us, right? That we did something so great, that we somehow, earned this amazing bounty. We're supposed to remember, number one, it's a gift from God. Number two, by staying in that tenuous hut, right, with the sky peeking through, that life is fragile. And if we don't stop and enjoy and cherish the moments we're in and recognize that they are a gift, then we lose sight of what life is all about. We shouldn't think, as my mother likes to, I guess it's probably a Yiddish saying, you shouldn't think who you are, right? You shouldn't get so caught up in what you've accomplished or who you now think you are that you forget the greater world, or as Ecclesiastes would say, the emptiness or the fleeting nature of the world. We have to focus in on the here and now and show gratitude and also find a way to really appreciate where we are, no matter how challenging that moment may be. So, now you're going to go read all of Ecclesiastes, I know, and also go read The Way of Solomon. I'm sure it's still in print. It's a really slim book, but just really, really thought-provoking and beautiful. But we're on the bottom here, though, we're going to read the Chol Moed Sukkot festival reading, talking about the festival itself from Exodus chapter 34, verses 21 to 24, and we're going to share in the blessing together, which is on page 250 if you need it. I always have reading glasses. Not too much? Okay. All right, we share in the blessing. 1, 2, 3. Baruch hu et Adonai hamvarach. Baruch Adonai hamvarach le'olam va'ed. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim. Ve'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch ata Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Sheshet yamim tavod, uvayom hashvi'i tishbot, becharish uvakatzir tishbot. V'chag shavuot ta'aseh lecha, bikurei ketzir chitim, v'chag hasif ha'tekufat hashana. Shalosh pe'amim bashana, Yera'eh kol zechurecha et pnei ha'adon Adonai Elohei Israel. Ki urish goyim mipanecha v'hirchavti et gvulecha v'lo yachmod ish et artecha balotecha le'raot et pnei Adonai Elohecha Shalosh pe'amim b'ashana.
6 days you shall work, but on the 7th day you shall cease from labor. You shall cease from labor even at plowing time and harvest time. You shall observe the Feast of Weeks of the first fruit of the wheat harvest, and the Feast of Ingathering at the turn of the year. 3 times a year all your males shall appear before the sovereign Lord, the God of Israel. I will drive out nations from your path and enlarge your territory. No one will covet your land when you go up to appear before Adonai your God 3 times a year. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch ata Adonai noten haTorah. In the presence of Torah, we offer prayers for healing, thinking of those in our lives, those who we hold in our hearts, who are in need of prayers and our love and support. We think about them whispering their names out loud, And we link our prayers for the ones we love to all those who are needing healing, those listed in our order of service, everyone in our community and beyond who needs prayers. And singing together, we share in Misha Berach. I like it better that way anyway. We turn to page 252 as we rise in honor of the Torah.
וזאת התורה ששם משה לפני בני ישראל, ופי אדוני ביד משה. וזאת התורה ששם משה לפני בני ישראל, ופי אדוני ביד משה. Page 256. עת חיים היא למחזיקים בה, ותומכיה מאושר. דרכיה תחינום, וכל נתיבותיה שלום. השיבנו אדוני אליך ונשובה, חדש ימינו כקדם.
We continue with the concluding portion of our service. Aleinu is on page 283.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שהוא שם חלקנו לייחד את שמו, וגור עלינו להמליך מלכותו. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא, ביום ההוא, יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו, ושמו, ושמו אחד.
You may be seated. As we turn to page 291 for our memorial meditation. We note with sadness the death of Frida Fisher. It is hard to sing of oneness when the world is not complete, when those who once brought wholeness to our life have gone, and naught but memory can fill the emptiness that passing leaves behind. But memory can tell us only what we were in company with those we loved. It cannot help us find what each of us alone must now become. Yet no one is really alone. Those who live no more echo still within our thoughts and words, and what they did is part of what we have become. We do best homage to our dead when we live our lives more fully, even in the shadow of our loss. For each of our lives is worth the life of the whole one, and each one is the breath of the ultimate one. In affirming the one, we affirm the worth of each one, whose life now ended brought us closer to the source of life, and whose unity no one is alone, and every life finds purpose. On this Shabbat, we consecrate the yard sites observed in our congregation this week of Sadie Bayer, Jacqueline Baker, Dr. Harold Bayer, Marvin C. Beck, Rizelle Bloom, Ben C. Carr, Joseph W. Carson, Rosalie Chasnoff, David Chozik, Lois Cohen, Martin Colton, Pearl Diamond, Eddie Duchin, Teresa Gell, Dorothy Goodman, Stanley Goodman, Isabel Goodstein, Jack Gorlick, Reva Grinman, John Herr, Edward G. Jackson, Ada Jacobs, Dr. Peter Kamen, Raymond Kaufman, Cynthia Koch, Andrea Lockman, Marjorie Lockman, Shirley Lackritz, Hyman Liebman, Dora Levine, Robert Muir, Arthur Mullen, Edward Oppenheimer, Mosey Palatevich, Rebecca Pearl, Sam Ricklin, Eleanor Rosenthal, Leon Rosenthal, Irving Rubin, Dr. Norman Rubin, Pauline Doris Rubin, Dorothy Feinsilver Selinger, Evelyn Siegel, Gerald Silber, Robert Storer, Sam Susser, Marvin I. Unger, Hannah B. Victor, Marvin Warman, Michael Wiener, Jerry Westheimer, Bernard A. Wiederman, Adria Jane Whitkin, and Beatrice Zimmerman. To their memories, we link the names of 6 who in the last 30 days, Shloshim, have been laid to their eternal rest: Jerry Sivan, Joyce Bradfield, Danielle Kristen Howard, Robert Wright, Perry King, and Bernice Porter. And to their memories, we also link the names of 4 who this past week, their families observing the period of Shiva, were laid to their eternal rest: Melvin O. Levine, husband of Barbara, father of Janice and Larry Stone, and Michael Levine, grandfather of Jacob, Rachel, Kayla, brother of Sydney and Augusta Levine, and Dana Robinson. Ruth Friedberg, mother of Michael and Barbara Friedberg, and Jean Friedberg, grandmother of John and Joseph Friedberg, aunt of Bernadette Wolf and Dr. Andrew Wolf. Marilyn Golden, sister-in-law of Norman Miller, aunt of Jordy Pollock, Russell Miller, and Adam Miller, great aunt of Cooper Miller and Charlie Pollock, and life partner of Rabbi David Cooper. And Doris Freed, wife of Saul, mother of Billy and Cheryl, grandmother of Tyler and Russell, sister of Marvin Barish. Zichronam livracha, may their memories be for blessing, along with the memories of those we hold in our own hearts each and every day. We turn to page 294 as we rise together and share in the words of the Mourner's Kaddish as one community. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, be'alma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon u'v'yamechon u'v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'v'yizman kariv v'yamru amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mivarach le'olam omeo maya, yiparach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shemei d'kudashah b'rechu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechamata, da'amiram be'alma v'yamru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yamru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yamru amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us and to all Israel, to which we say, amen. Our closing song is Ki Shmera Shabbat on page 330.
Ki Shmera Shabbat
Shabbat Shalom.